Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today for the final part of our Leaving a Legal Legacy training series. For those of you who have been with us since day one, thank you for coming back and coming to the sessions that we've provided in this training series. If this is your first time coming to our training series, welcome. I think this is a really great session for anybody, people who have come to our series or not, to be at regardless. Because we just have an all-star panel of people who were in legal aid, have moved out of private practice, and are here to talk to you, to give you advice, and to facilitate an open discussion on professional growth. So with that being said, thank you all who are attending, and of course, thank you to our speakers here today. Before we move into the content of what we're going to discuss, I always want to give a little bit of housekeeping announcements. First and foremost, this is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be sent to all of you who are here and all of you who registered, even if you have to hop off early or you registered but can't make it. Don't worry, you will receive a copy of this recording in your inbox in about 24 hours from Zoom. That email will come from Zoom, not from me directly, but as always, I'm going to pop my email address into the chat. If you don't see this recording and you're looking for it and you don't see it in your inbox, you can always reach out to me directly. Second piece of housekeeping announcements, CLE credit. This is approved by the Florida Bar for CLE credit. I will be announcing that code towards the end of our discussion, and that code will also be provided in that email with the recording of this session in 24 hours from Zoom in your inbox. Third piece of housekeeping announcements, please ask questions. We want this to be a free-flowing conversation where anything that you might be thinking about this topic, we have the ability to talk about with all the folks who are here today. So don't be shy, drop your questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we will filter them and ask them when we can, whether it's in live time or after the discussion, depending on time. Final piece of housekeeping announcements are closed captions. Those are enabled for anybody that does need that extra accessibility. If you're having any issue with those, message me separately or email me. Like I said, I'm going to drop it in the chat, my email address, and I will help onboard you. And before I turn it over to Todd, who, for those of you who have been here through the sessions, remember from previous sessions, I do want to say, one, I don't think I said my name. For those of you who know me, I just feel like you all know me, but Alexis Alvarez-Bartholomew, Director of Statewide Training. And this particular session is titled specifically The Entrepreneurial Esquire, Navigating the Challenges and Triumphs of Launching Your Own Firm. So too excited. I should have said that first, but too excited to get into it. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, who has been an integral part of Leaving a Legal Legacy in our training series. And I did this last time. Before I turn it over to Todd, I'm going to turn it over to Jorge, who is here with us. Jorge, who you see on the screen, is with the Public Interest Law section of the Florida Bar, also a brainchild of this. Jorge, turning it over to you to tell us a little bit about PILLs, if you want to introduce yourself briefly, then turn it back to me, then I'll turn it to Todd.
All right, thank you, Alexis. So I am a member of the Public Interest Law section, also known as PILLs. I've been a member for the last few years, and I didn't know much about the section. I joined initially as part of the Landlord-Tenant Consumer Work Group. It was a great work group that led to me being elected to the Executive Council. So I also joined the Professional Development Committee. So PILLs, it's a great organization. You have a lot of attorneys from different areas of law and different organizations, both public interest law firms and private law firms. And it's been a great experience to grow and network. It kind of led to this specific webinar series. And a really exciting part about this, I'm a legal aid attorney for life. Like, I've been with legal aid since the beginning of my career, so I have never been exposed to the private attorney side of things. So I've trained a lot of attorneys, and I've worked with a lot of attorneys that had started at the same time that I did, and we've never had this exposure. So it's always great to learn how the other side operates and know what our options are. There's a lot of skills that we get to learn from private attorneys that we can use when we serve our own clients, but it also opens a lot of doors for us public interest attorneys. So thank you for this opportunity, and passing it back to you, Alexis.
Thank you. And yes, I'm also a member of PILLs. I dropped the link into the chat to learn more about PILLs. great community, great people. I really recommend it. So back to what I was saying before. I'm very excited to turn this over to Todd, who is an attorney and the founder of C. Todd Smith Law. Todd is just an incredible person who has worked with us to create this training series. And anytime I've said to him, do you think we can do this? He was like, absolutely. And how can I make it happen? So Todd, thank you so much. I'm going to get emotional because it's our last of this series, but I may bother you again in the future. So, so turning it over to you and letting folks know that I will drop bios of our speakers into the chat to facilitate what Todd is going to do as any form of introduction.
Thanks, Alexis. And I'm a little sad today, too. I'm going to miss our series here. And it's been so much fun doing this with you. And Jorge, thank you as well. It's been great. I've enjoyed it. And I'm excited. Today is the grand finale of our series, and it's going to be a good one. So I recruited some amazing attorneys and really good people here in our legal community to be on our panel today, and really want to get at what is at the heart of starting your own law firm. Is being an entrepreneur. And what does that mean to be an entrepreneur? And the reason I think today is such an exciting workshop to do is most of us, we go to law school, we become attorneys, and we're really good at the technical practice of being a lawyer, but we have no idea how to run a business. We have no idea what being an entrepreneur is all about, unless you're one of those attorneys who was in business or an entrepreneur before you went to law school. But a lot of us, we didn't have that experience. So for me, I've made a lot of mistakes in my career when I started my law firm about 26 years ago. And so I love to try and help other attorneys in their journey, especially when starting their own practice. So we've got some really great panelists today, and I'm excited. We're going to let them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with over to my right, over here, Brandon Sapp. So Brandon, I'll start with you and tell us a little bit about your practice, your firm. When did you start your firm, and your background? What job did you have before? What law firm did you come from? So Brandon, go ahead and take it away.
So my name is, hello, everybody. I'll start us out by Go Gators. I'm a big Gator, I'm a double Gator, but my name is Brandon Sapp. I started out at the Public Defender's Office in Orlando, so go PD9. I know we got a couple of us on the call. And basically I was there for 4.5 years. So there I tried cases from misdemeanors to capital cases. At that point, I moved on to do 4 years at the DeBovian Simmons Knight LLP, doing insurance defense work. So I did that for 4 years. It was incredible. Got a lot of experience when it comes to depositions, preparing for trial, just everything, mediations. And I took that experience and went to a very big firm called Morgan & Morgan for 2 years, where I did premise liability work and some car accident work, which was an incredible experience there. This past year, I was at Burns Shepherd Favors, which is a smaller law firm. I think it's 5 attorneys, but they were just some really great attorneys there. Learned a lot about starting my own law firm, or learned a lot about small firm life. And what I ultimately did is I started my own law firm back in February. So my law firm is Brandon Sapp Law, PLLC. We do primarily personal injury work, but we also do criminal law work. I can't get away from criminal law. It's my passion. And I'm good at it. So criminal law work and some other work, business and other things, but primarily personal injury and criminal law. But I just want to start out by saying, when it comes to this topic, it's such a great it's going to be a great conversation today, because I ran away from the idea of starting my own law firm, even though it's something I ultimately want to do for years. And I'm just happy that I pulled the trigger in February, and things have been up and up, and everything's been going well. So I'll talk about the good, the bad, and ugly. So I'll turn it back to you, Todd.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. And Brandon, I'm so glad you're here. The reason I wanted you to be a part of this call is because, we're friends and we know each other. And I know that you recently have started your law firm. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, you've just kind of gone through those kind of decision-making processes, right? And making the leap.
PTSD.
Exactly. So you're still new into it. So I want to get your perspective. Next, let's go to Zarina. Zarina, introduce yourself, please.
Everybody, I'm Zarina Hernandez, and I am a solo attorney. I have my own firm, Z Hernandez Law, and I practice mainly criminal defense and bankruptcy. My background is that being an attorney is my second career. I was, before I went to law school, I actually worked in with developmentally delayed adults. And I did that for about 7 years. And decided I got interested in law. I went to be a legal secretary to make sure that this is really the money I wanted to spend that money on this and all that time. I did like it. I went to law school. Afterwards, I became a public defender in PDO 5. That's Circuit 5 in Marion County. I was there for a while, and then I went to Osceola County as a public defender. And I left in 2021, and I started my own law firm. And it's been 3 years in April.
All right. So Zarina's been in her own law firm for a few years, so she's got a little different perspective. And then we'll move on to our next panelist is Clint Moore. Clint, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Clint Moore. I am primarily a insurance coverage attorney. I'm also a licensed public adjuster. I graduated from FIU Law and got a job at the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office. Tried cases there for about 5 years, and then jumped out and started a law firm with 2 other partners doing civil litigation. I kind of did a whole lot of different things back then. That was in 2018. And then in 2020, right after the pandemic hit, I moved back home to Orlando, Florida, which is where I am now, and started my solo law firm, Clint & Company, PA, again, where we primarily do property insurance, insurance coverage work.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you all for being here. And I didn't intentionally recruit former public defenders, but I'm also a former public defender from the Ninth Circuit. So I know we're all going to speak the same language here today. And that's kind of interesting. I'm glad that we all kind of have that similar background, including Alexis too. So we're all former public defenders. So and Brandon, you kind of talked about some of your other experience. You've had, pretty broad experience at other law firms on the defense side and the plaintiff side. And so for you, this decision to make the leap is pretty new, pretty fresh. Walk me through what was your decision-making process. And you talked about it took you a while to get there. Tell me about your journey.
It's funny because my father reached out to me recently when I opened my own law firm. And he told me, he was like, I remember back in college, you said you wanted to, like college, not even law school, college, you said you want to open your own law firm. And I'm glad you're finally following your dreams. And, I forgot I had said that to him at all, I think personally as an attorney, for me, a couple of things scared me. The financial part of owning your own law firm scared me. And I don't want to say scared, but it gave me major concerns. You read about those attorneys in the Florida Bar newspaper or something like that for commingling, misappropriation and stuff like that. And obviously I know not to do that. Okay. But it's just the other aspects of just making sure you have a budget, making sure you have this, just making sure I was proficient in those things. So for me personally, that was something that made me give major pause to opening my own law firm. And sooner or later, I had to have a conversation with myself and say, well, if you have concerns about certain things, you hire other people, obviously, to help you with those concerns. Or you become proficient in those things and make sure that you do what you have to do and learn what you have to learn to make that happen. So, I read a couple books, saw lots of CLEs through the Florida Bar website and stuff like that, Legal Few, and, basically connected with an accountant that kind of walked me through a couple things, and that's helped me along the way through the process. So for me personally, it's more believing in yourself and making sure you can do the things that you say you want to do, but just having the confidence to jump out and do them. So
how long was it, Brandon, that you were thinking about making the leap before you did finally do it?
I mean, I wanted to open my own firm when I left law school, but I also wanted to go to the public defender's office, get the experience. Told myself I'll do 2 years at the public defender's office. Loved it so much, did 4.5. And then after that, I was like, well, I need to learn some civil law because if I open my own firm and I'm just doing criminal, I have to have I want to be able to diversify things. So I talked myself out to open my own law firm then, did 4 years at DSK Law, learned a lot about civil law, got a lot of litigation experience when it comes to civil law. They said, well, I need to learn the other side now because I learned the defense side. I need to learn the plaintiff side now. So throughout that whole process, I was definitely talking myself out of doing things. And it's I mean, if you want to say how many years, over 10 years, of talking
Right.
myself out of just making
Right.
this decision. And just I'm happy now that I made that decision and kind of kicking myself for not doing it sooner.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know anybody that became their own boss and started their own law firm that says, "Oh, I should have waited. I did it too soon." I mean, most people I think said, "I should have done it before. I shouldn't have waited so long." Zarina, how about you? How'd you make the decision to make the leap?
Um, it turns out that I've always wanted to have my own business. That was something I realized later in life. And so once I became an attorney, I thought I should go start my own firm. However, I did want the experience. That's why I became a public defender. I wanted to do criminal defense while I was in law school. And when I was barred, I was looking for work. I wanted to always do criminal defense. And so I just wanted the experience, but I've always known I wanted to have my own business. I've always known I wanted to do criminal defense once I became an attorney. And that's where I married to after I got out of law school. The funny thing is that Brandon mentioned Legal Fuel, and yes, that is like a great resource to use when you're starting out. And with me, I thought that was enough. I thought going to Legal Fuel and looking at some of the materials they had there was great. And of course, there are some books like How to Build Your Own Law Firm. But actually, that's just to get your foot in the door, and it's not enough, but it's a great place to start.
Yeah, for sure. Good place to start. A lot of good resources. How about you, Clint? Let's talk about your journey making the leap to start your own firm.
So mine was a little bit different than Brandon. Like I was very happy at the public defender's office. There's a lot of stuff I still miss about that job. But it was really presented to me. The other two partners were friends of mine, and one was already out on his own, and the other was ready to leave the insurance defense side. And they were ready to go. So it was it was a decision I made like kind of under pressure. I did, of course, run some numbers, and I thought at the end of the day, after looking at everything, that it was going to be fine. But I just jumped into it. I certainly have an entrepreneurial spirit. Both my parents were entrepreneurs and self-employed, so I guess it was kind of like in my blood or DNA, as they say. But it was just something that was presented to me, and we just sort of dived in and learned along the way.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a way a lot of people do it, right? Is they just jump in the deep end of the pool and, sink or swim and let's make it happen. And that is kind of, entrepreneurs tend to be, high risk, high reward type folks. And so it sounds like that's kind of the approach that you took. Just jump right in and let's do it and make it happen. Brandon, you talked about something which I think is kind of interesting. And I had this little different situation coming from the public defender's office, especially back in the 90s. We didn't make a whole lot of money. So leaving to start my own practice was actually a way I thought was going to be easier to make more money because I was used to making very little money when I was a public defender. You had a different experience. You went through a couple of private firms where you were probably being paid pretty decent. So to make the leap and go out on your own, you really had a financial decision that you had to kind of weigh there. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, I guess it's more of a. I think I've always had a mindset that I wanted to start a business on my own. I just, like I said before, had my different doubts about it. One of the decisions I had to make is, this is going to be kind of an unstable situation, obviously, unless, some people have made loads of money. And, when they jump out on their own, they're just like, hey, I have money to sustain me for years to come if I need to. I saved some money, but I definitely didn't make money to save, for the rest of my life, just in case this law firm thing doesn't work out. So what I did personally is I kind of had a conversation with myself and said, what can I live off of? And then crunched the numbers. I said, okay, well, I can live off of this. How much can I devote to the business? How much can I vote to that? And just, I had to make that decision. It's funny. They call them the golden handcuffs. And basically when you're at a law firm that's paying you a good amount of money and, you're just there, you're just like, why just sit back and take care of these cases and I get paid a certain amount of money? This is the life. I mean, eventually for some people it is a life, and I definitely don't want to discount those people and say like they're making their own choice. That's not true. You know, some people, but for me it wasn't. And me personally, I definitely I wanted to have my cases and give, you know, my clients the Brandon Sapp experience as opposed to experience that, you know, or the culture that the other firms, you know, although they're great cultures, but they weren't the Brandon Sapp experience I wanted to give to my clients. So I made that jump and, you know, said I'm going to take a little risk. Obviously, I'm not a high risk person like Clint maybe, but I'm just I'm a person that said, you know, I wanted to do something for me, so I made it happen.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you know, for me, my decision when I made the jump, I wasn't married. I didn't have a family yet or anything like that. So all I had to worry about was taking care of myself. So even if I left and I fell on my face and I didn't make any money, I had a plan in place. I would be okay. I could handle that. But it's a little different when you've been out in the world for a while, working for a while, maybe making a certain amount of money. And if you do have a family, that certainly creates a little bit more of you know, a challenge, I think, because you are taking on the risk of starting this new firm. Clint and Zarina, how did you guys kind of navigate those kind of financial challenges or the concern of making the leap and jumping out?
Well, for me, I've been saving money to do this. And I had a, you know, that net there, that safety net. I have a safety net, and it was from working, putting money aside and all that. I was able to make money and not have to dip into that too much. And that's how I'm managing my risk, I guess. So for me, I am married. This is my second career. My spouse has his own career, and we're able to survive without me having to, like, we're not living off of me. So we're good as far as being able to survive every day, pay our bills and all that. So for me, this is what I do for a living. And I can bear a bigger risk than others because of that situation that I'm in. So I'm different about it.
Yeah. Clint, what about you?
For me, I would say my story is more like do as I say, not as I do. At least, you know, that first one, like I said, I kind of jumped out. But when I started my solo law firm, I had been doing it for a couple of years. So I was able to change that a little bit, make some better decisions. But I mean, I think the most important thing is just like you need to expect that you're going to have variable or no income at times. So you need to save, you know, before you do that to the best of, you know, that you can under your circumstances. And really, like when you're planning your firm and you're envisioning everything, that's really what it comes down to is like what kind of firm do you want to have? You know, what you need to plan kind of everything beginning with the vision, and then you can, you know, start to put the details in place to know like, okay, what do I need to do like step by step to be ready for the kind of firm that I want to have. And you can, you know, in my experience, I always think like when you start off, you want to have as low overhead as possible. You want to leverage technology as much as you possibly can to where you're not, you know, having to hire staff if you're not ready. And just like using your time as best you can. But really it just comes down to planning. And I think like planning and saving before you make the decision and jump into it is probably the best bet to reduce some of the stress around the money issues.
Yeah, and I did it completely, probably the wrong way. I didn't have any money saved up. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got the cheapest office I could. I went into business with another public defender friend of mine, a partner. We found the cheapest office space we could get. It had all this ugly wood paneling in there. We went in ourselves and did the build out, ripping off the paneling and redoing the office. So that saved us money. We didn't have an assistant. You know, that's, you know, it takes a while sometimes to be ready where you can hire staff and have a team of people. But I just still remember to this day, my mom got me a desk from a thrift shop that had written in wax pencil on the corner, like $9.98. That's what my desk cost. You know, it was $10. And I didn't take the price tag off because I wanted to remember where I came from when I got started. So these days still, even though you're into your practice, there's some financial risk, right? I mean, my goodness, we just went through COVID, and Clint, you're dealing with a situation where, tort reform and things have happened. They're changing first party insurance cases. How do you manage those financial risks and changes in your practice that, we're all going to have to deal with at some point?
Man, great question. Definitely hits close to home. Like if you've been paying attention, yes, they eliminated the right to first party attorney's fees. So that was a completely different practice scenario for my area. And I mean, that's part of being adaptable. Part of it is being involved in organizations like these and others where you can anticipate those changes coming. At the time that was happening, I was volunteering a lot with the Florida Justice Association, and I was up in Tallahassee trying to help the lobbyists up there. And so I was aware of what was coming. I was involved with other practitioners in the area, so we were brainstorming. And then, really the actual nuts and bolts of it is instead of getting our fees paid separately now, it's a lot of contingency work. But we were ready for that, and you can kind of change your business practices and the advice that you give to clients, and find other creative ways to adapt to that, like using proposals for settlement to try to, claw back some of the fees. But really, like just being involved in organizations and networking with others, which is crucial as a part of being an entrepreneur. It helps you anticipate those sort of changes and be ready for them.
Yeah, having a network is really important. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Brandon, do you want to offer something on that?
Yeah, you just have to pivot. I think that's the biggest thing that just, COVID has taught us, and also tort reform. I think you just have to pivot. FJA was amazing at getting us information when it comes to claims attorneys about just what's going to happen, what should we expect, all hands on deck. That's why we saw that major push of like a gazillion case has been filed a week before the bill actually took effect, which, that's just, you have to pivot. And I mean, that's just kind of the name of the game when it comes to law firms. Can't get stuck in your ways. You can't get down on anything. I mean, you have to pivot and come up with a new way. Like when it comes to negligence, the standard has changed. You know what I mean? Like now it's 51%, as before it was what it was. So, those cases that come in that are a lot more dicier, that you're like, I can see a jury possibly saying that this person may be 51% liable as opposed to not being liable at all. You kind of you make a major decision or make a good decision on those cases, as opposed to just kind of, just taking cases that, maybe you would have done before tort reform. So it all depends, but it's just pivot and make sure you talk to people around you. The situation that you're going through, I'm pretty sure that you will endure. Other people in your same field or other people around you are doing the same thing. So just say, hey, how are you guys handling this? What are you guys going to do to pivot? Or what other kind of laws can we get into to sustain ourselves so we can still do what we love to do, but, just sustain ourselves through the course of just paying for that stuff.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, guys. So, you mentioned, having a network of people that you can lean on or asking others for advice. I think that's one of the most important things you have to do when you're starting your law firm is, and I would tell you do this before you actually open your doors, which is to build your network. Who are the people that are going to support you and help you after you start your firm, whether that's and helping you in your practice area, giving you advice on substantive legal questions or issues that may come up, and who's going to help give you business advice, who's going to help you run your firm and figure out all those things you need to know about a firm. What advice do you guys have on when you're getting started, how to build and grow your network?
Well, I just did it, so I guess I'll go first.
Yeah, we'll let you go first, Brandon.
I'm the youngest, I guess, when it comes to at least starting a law firm. I think don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to just meet people. There's certain people that I went to lunch with, fully prepared to pay for the bill and do whatever I need to do, but just wanted that knowledge that they had, and just to create some kind of relationship with them to see kind of what they did, what they felt like they didn't do right, and you got to go with people that are honest. Some people will tell you, oh, law firm life is so, just amazing. And it is amazing, but there's times where it's ups and downs, it's ebbs and flows. So I went to lunch with people like Todd and a couple other people that just sat here and gave me just the real of like, hey, this is what you're planning to do. these are the mistakes I made. Don't make those same mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes and be okay with making them. So you just need to rely on those sources. There's other resources through the Florida Bar. I'm a member of the Solo and Small Firm committee through the Florida Bar, which is an incredible committee. If you're not a member of that right now, if you're thinking about opening your own firm, they have resources and everything else that will help you with that. Some of the younger attorneys that are opening law firms, I think Gary Lesser, past president of the Florida Bar, he created Counsel to Counsel, which is a mentor program, which older attorneys kind of mentor younger attorneys that are opening their own law firms or kind of hanging their own shingle in order to make sure they don't go into the practice and just they're not prepared or they don't have anybody there to bounce ideas off of or questions to. So just, when it comes to, you can't do it alone. It takes a village. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. You should have a village of friends, a village of people that's going to help you, and one, not only finding clients, but help you with advice on sustaining your law firm.
Yeah, and I think Brandon makes a good point there too. Don't be afraid to ask. Speaking as an older attorney, I think I'm the old guy on the panel here, or the moderator here today. But there's going to be some attorneys, and I would say reach out to some of the best attorneys in your area, in your practice area, and ask them if they'd be interested in helping you in a mentor-mentee kind of relationship. Now, some are just going to be too busy, and that's not their thing, and they're going to tell you no. And that's okay. But others might be very, very even flattered that you asked them, and they'll be very happy and gracious with their time and expertise and knowledge to share that with you. Zarina, what are your thoughts on that, building your network and getting to know people?
Well, so when I was a public defender, I was just like married to the job. I didn't work and building a network or anything like that. So going on my own, I didn't have a network, a real network. I didn't have a book of business, and I've been learning so much doing this. And Brandon's 100% correct. He's doing it exactly right. You meet people who are have been doing this. Some people come in and maybe they don't want to talk to somebody who maybe does the same thing you do. Maybe you don't want to talk to maybe another criminal defense attorney because they're your competition, but that's not true. Everybody has so much information to offer you. Everybody's been super helpful. Everybody's been super nice, and it's a back and forth. You have to make sure that you're also showing value to whoever's trying to help you as well. So that's something you learn as you're networking. I was able to build my network by joining the voluntary bars. I've joined business groups, and just reaching back out to my old friends, the ones that were PDs with me, people from my past career. And that's what I've been doing as far as building my network and what I can offer as advice for that.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of options. Also, all of you guys are aware of these and may participate in some of these. There's lots of online communities. Certainly there's Facebook groups, and you can meet people online through social media and Facebook. But I still think old-fashioned face-to-face networking is the best, because you build deeper, more meaningful relationships. And that's, the foundation of any good marketing or referral kind of system you're going to have is people that know, like, and trust you, that are going to refer business to you. And the way you get to know and trust people, it's a little bit harder online or through social media. It really happens in face-to-face interaction. So, as a goal, I try to have at least 2 to 3 lunches per week. A great book I like to recommend, Never Eat Alone. And it's about going out and having lunches with people and getting to know people. But also, like Zarina mentioned, through different business networking groups might be an option, or community service organizations like Kiwanis clubs or a Rotary Club or something like that. And of course, your local bar associations are great places to meet other attorneys and network, and also look for mentors there. Clint, what's your experience been in building and growing your network?
So 3 things, 2 of which have already been hit on. 1, you should be taking other lawyers or potential referral sources out to lunch or coffee, which is much cheaper and faster, all of the time, at least 3 times a week, until you are too busy to continue doing that, and then you're still going to have to do it. So lunches and coffee are non-negotiables. You have to do it. 2, get involved now. I was definitely kind of like a back of the class type person, and when I was in the PD's office, like, I didn't get involved in the FACDL and all these other things. as soon as I got out, I wish that I would, or I would have then. So get involved now, even if you don't think that, it's a great use of your time or whatever. Trust me, it is. And it's a worthwhile investment, not only in your personal growth, but in your professional growth, should you choose to go out and start your own firm too. And then 3, really important, pick up your phone and call every single person in it and just ask them for business. Even if it's somebody who you are close with, that you talk with all the time, if you are explicit with them that you're calling about, to selfishly promote your firm, I'm telling you, every time I've done that, it has paid off. I've had close friends who something happened, like their parent was injured, and it just didn't dawn on them. I got a case from that. We just had a close to $300,000 settlement from just picking up the phone and calling someone when I started doing public adjusting. And it turns out I had no idea, but this person used to be a public adjuster, no longer does it, and knew someone who had a need after Hurricane Ian. So it will bring in business. It will keep you top of mind, and it's not easy to do. So it seems like a simple thing, but taking that action and picking up the phone, I promise you it'll do wonders for you.
Yeah, and I think it might be practice specific, depending on your practice area and what type of firm you have. But I think there's a tendency, especially with a lot of our younger attorneys, that think the first thing they need to do is have this big social media presence, that's where all the cases are going to come from. And I think that, and this is from somebody who's been doing social media since social media came out, the best cases, probably everybody on this call agrees, but you guys jump in if you have any other opinions on it. The best cases come from referrals from former clients and from other attorneys. And so spending time on those networks and those relationships are going to pay off a lot more. Getting on the phone, like Clint said, is such a good idea. Getting on the phone and just calling and talking to people, you're going to get so much more out of that than just spending a bunch of time, creating content for your social media. Think of every single person and get their email address and put that in a spreadsheet and start sending out emails to your email list from day one. But even more importantly, I think Clint's right. Get on the phone and talk to people. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
I do, because Clint brought up a couple things I want to touch on. It's funny, and we're going to be candid today. I got very involved with the Orange County Bar and the Policy Perkins Bar when I first started out as a public defender. And I eventually became president of the Young Lawyer section of the Orange County Bar and also president of the Policy Perkins Bar. But people told me, number one, why are you involved with that stuff? And I'm just like, because for me personally, I love the PD's office. But I knew I wasn't going to be there for the rest of my life. It is what it is. And we had a person, Bryce Akins, who was a manager here for the misdemeanor downtown. And his whole year of being manager of the PD's office with the misdemeanor people, he brought in people outside of the PD's office to talk to us. He's like, you're not going to be here forever. So you need to get your feet wet, kind of go out there, and I'm happy that he preached that mantra to our group and not only in the groups behind us. But I'm very happy with that. Other attorneys told me, that kind of did what I wanted to do. Well, other attorneys aren't going to see you cases. Why are you getting involved with this stuff? Because you need to go in the pub, you need to go in the community and do this, which is great. Community, you need to be in the community, depending on what kind of law you do and stuff like that. But a lot of my cases come referrals from other attorneys. And it's because people, number one, they trust you. They say, hey, I trust you with myself. I trust you with my family. So I'm sending this case to you. Or number two, people are so vested at that point in your success and their own success. Like they've seen you come from the public defender's office to doing this, to doing that. So they're just like, I want to help you. And that's kind of the relationships you want to build and build those friendships and have genuine relationships that are going to sustain forever, as opposed to kind of the superficial relationships that may come up later on. And yes, coffee with people, definitely. It's less time, but it also is a point where you can make a connection. It's less eating and more talking at that point too. So I think those are all good points.
Yeah, and on lunches, I'll tell you, I mean, I budget for my lunches, you know, because lunches will add up. So if you're doing 2 or 3 lunches a week, that will add up on you. And as Clint mentioned, if you're not ready, and we're all going to advise you to keep your overhead as low as possible when you start your firm, then coffee. Coffee might be the way to go. But I also did, especially during, you know, the pandemic, did a lot of Zoom meetings where I would just send an email to somebody, I didn't know them, and I just said, "Hey, I'm trying to expand my network. I'm meeting new attorneys in other practice areas. Would you like to meet on Zoom for 15, 20 minutes just to say hello?" And, you know, a lot of people will ignore that email, but a lot of attorneys will say, "Yeah, I'd love to meet you." And then we jump on Zoom for 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. Um, so one thing I want to get into now, everybody, which I think we all face this. I'm, you know, like 30 years in and I still face this. And this is probably something I am trying to actively work on right now. And that is making good decisions quickly. I tend to have certain times in my career been maybe too cautious and had a great idea, but I was afraid to pull the trigger because I was afraid maybe the idea wouldn't work. I was afraid I would make a mistake, I would fall on my face, whatever it is. And in hindsight, if some of those ideas I pulled the trigger, I think they would have probably been pretty successful and helped my practice in a lot of ways. So, how do you deal with, I guess, what I'll call the fear of making certain decisions about, we talked a little bit earlier about pivoting, going different directions. How do you guys deal with that, making decisions and overcoming maybe some fears you have about running your own business? Zarina, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I struggle with that every day, almost every day. So you know how it is. Like you're writing, you're researching, you're writing, and you're like, I need to research more. I need to research more. I'm going to find that one case, that best case for this situation. Or you know, you're preparing for trial, and you're like, did I think of everything? Did I think of all the questions? Am I sure this is what I need to do? And you always feel like maybe that's not, it wasn't enough. I had that was how I was operating. I always wanted to research everything before I make any decisions. And finally, I just have to trust my gut. And I'm learning. I'm not learning. I'm trying to practice that all the time. Just do it. You know enough right now to make a good decision. It's not permanent. You can always fix it if something goes wrong. So that's something I still am working on.
Yeah, and I struggle with that because it's part of me. My problem is being a perfectionist too, which is something I'm always dealing with, right? Wanting to make the perfect decision or have all the factors line up perfectly before I pull the trigger on something or make it happen. Clint, how about you? How do you deal with that sort of decisions you have to make in your firm and your practice?
Well, I'm glad you used the word perfect, because that the first thing I was going to say is this is something that I repeat to myself in all aspects of having the firm is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You know, you just have to take action at some point. But really, the best way to ensure that you're making the right decision, it all is going to come back to your vision of your firm and the systems that you built to enact that vision. If you've got a clear vision of what you want to be and how to get there, then the systems that you put into place, that you document, that you follow on every single case, or in any other aspect of running the firm, that stuff will lead you to take the right action and make the right decision. And it'll take some of the stress off of, you know, if you were to not have a plan or a vision or systems in place. But, you know, at the end of the day, as long as you kind of know where you're going and how you're going to get there, you just got to take action and not be afraid of making that perfect decision. Just make a good one. And if you fail, then you'll have an opportunity to learn from it.
Right. So I want to touch on something you said, Clint. Vision and systems, two really, really key things every law firm needs. On the vision question, you know, we know corporate America, they always have, here's our corporate values. This is what our company is about. But a lot of law firms, especially solo and small law firms, we don't tend to do that. But I did that in my firm a few years ago. We actually put it on a board that we had it up in the office. These are our firm values, and this is our firm vision. This is our motto. So, Clint, talk about that a little bit more. How do you create and come up with your firm's vision so that you do have kind of some direction on where you want to go with your firm and that vision that you're trying to achieve?
So this part is a pretty cerebral part of being an entrepreneur. You really just have to kind of sit down or take a walk or however you do your best thinking, sit down, think, and write stuff down. When I say vision, like you're really going to think about everything. It could be, you know, a month from now, all the way to 30 years from now to retirement and all the stages in between. You want to think about who your clients are, what kind of problems they have that you can assist with, you know, all the way down to just like nuts and bolts stuff. Are you going to actually have a physical office space, or are you going to be a virtual firm? A lot of people do virtual firms now, some of the best lawyers in the country. Are you going to delegate stuff to third-party administrators, or are you going to have in-house staff that do it? You know, what are the type of guidelines that you're going to have to govern both of those entities? What makes you different than other firms? You know, at the end of the day, we're all kind of doing the same work in these different practice areas. So how are you going to differentiate yourself from people who are similarly situated? Write that down. Don't be afraid to let it change, you know, and make sure that you revisit it. But really, it's just thinking, what do I want out of this firm? Like, what do I want this to be? And then you can start thinking about, okay, now that I've got a rock as far as like what I want, how am I going to get there? And that's really where the systems come into play.
Yeah, and I love what you said there. You kind of have to get away. You kind of have to get out of the office. You said go for a walk, maybe you wherever your quiet place is, or it's, you know, go on a retreat for one, whatever it is. But you got to spend some time really thinking about all these issues. So, you know, I like to think about like, what do you want your law firm to look like in the next year, a year from now? What do you want your law firm to look like 5, 10 years from now? And then maybe even at the end of your career, what do you want your legal career to have looked like? And start designing a firm and a practice around that vision you have for the kind of firm that you want to have. And Clint kind of touches on this as well. You know, you got to have a firm that serves your life, not the other way around. So design a firm that is based on who you want to be as a person, as an attorney, and create that perfect firm based on who you are and what you want. Clint, you also talked about systems, and then I'm going to jump to everybody else as well. Talk about how important systems are in your firm. And did you know that when you started, or is that something you learned along the way?
No, I had no idea how important they were. I mean, I guess, intuitively understood that businesses had systems. You know, you interact with them a lot in your own like life as a consumer. But I did not know just how important they were until I really, you know, started the firm. There's a great book, I think it's called The Power of a System by a New York personal injury attorney. This guy literally put down all of his systems into a book verbatim, and you can read through it and see the level of detail that goes into, you know, what we're talking about here. But documenting your systems as far as every step of the way is going to be critical, because even if you start out as a solo doing everything yourself, if you want to grow, eventually you're going to have to explain to someone else how it is done. And the only way to do that is to document them. And you can start out with a simple checklist for each, you know, function. There's a lot of great apps out there now and other programs that will allow you to like record your screen, and you can like set up, you know, different audio or video, you know, walkthroughs of your systems to make it accessible for people that you hire. But it is critical. It will make your life so much easier, and you'll give your clients a better experience because they're going to be getting the same level of you know, experience the entire time. It's going to be, you know, equally distributed.
And that's such a good point. When you start your law firm, especially if you don't start out with having an assistant or any kind of staff, you think, well, I know what I'm doing. I have to do this, so I just do it. But if you can actually start documenting the procedures, steps 1 through 10 of how you're doing X, Y, and Z, you have to and think about, again, as part of your vision, but assume that you're going to have a team or a staff that you're going to have to train them at some point. So instead of waiting till you bring them on board, be thinking about that as you're creating your systems from day one. Brandon, you're kind of new into the process of getting your firm launched. Are you thinking about systems, and how are you implementing that systems thinking into your new practice?
110%. Yes, definitely systems. I looked, so like I said, going to lunch, paying attention to the people around me. I'm very observant when it comes to my friends and some of them that have gone out on their own. And, I've seen certain things happen with them, and certain things that didn't happen with them. So when it comes to systems, my friends that are like doing the best, that are just like having their own law firm, rocking and rolling, everything's kind of firing on all cylinders. They all have systems put in place. They're all detail oriented. They all have different things that are mapped out. It's like A, B, C, D is going to lead to this. And that's just, it's followed up what Clint, you said. There's no secret that that's kind of the key to the success. If anybody can walk up and have like the systems put in place and say, okay, well, I don't really know completely what, about this subject, but I know A and B has to be done, and it gets me to C, it moves the case along a lot better than, anything else. So that's definitely things that I put into place. And before I started my law firm, I kind of put down on paper some of the different systems I wanted to have, kind of workflows, and different things in order to make that happen. And workflows, if people don't know, it's just some of your case management software will have the ability to say, hey, it has little prompts like, okay, case just came in. You need to get this from them. You need to send out HIPAA forms. You need to do this, but it has a workflow, so you're not reinventing the wheel, trying to think of it every time. You just have a detailed playbook, and I like to think of it as a playbook in order to make sure that you're executing correctly and efficiently, and doing it at the top peak of the way you can do it. I learned about systems. I learned about things in my leadership experience, like Florida Bar Leadership Academy. I was in class 6, and we had a person come in specifically and talk about, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to start a nonprofit, whatever you want to do, you got to have systems. You got to have different things put into place. Got to have a vision. You got to be able to talk about if you don't know what the vision of your firm is, it's kind of hard selling another person or talking to another person about them and getting them to hire you. So you have to have that vision put in place. You have to kind of go from there. I did Florida Bar Young Lawyers Division, which they have a long range planning every year where they talk about they break apart. We sit in a room and they talk about just the vision for the organization, 6, 7, 10 years in advance. It just talks about not just over that next year, but long term, what kind of things can we do? So I took all those things, my leadership experience and stuff like that, and brought all that stuff to my law firm. And it's just like I said, it's only been a couple months, but I'm doing well so far. I did want to talk about one thing. A lot of people, and I think a lot of people, they'll sit here and kind of question themselves. Paralysis by overanalysis. So, just don't when you do that, number one, is worse than just making that mistake, because you're not doing anything at all at that point, and you're just getting yourself stressed out, and you deal with the anxiety. So once you have those systems put in place, that anxiety is going to become less and less and less, because hey, point A, B, and C is at least getting done, which is going to lead me to Z, as opposed to just wondering and not having systems put in place.
Yeah, they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today, right? So don't wait. If you haven't done it, start it now and make sure you're doing that. The other thing they say all the time is if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. So you really got to have a plan and a roadmap for your practice of how you're going to grow and build it into the vision that you have. So, money's a big factor. We talked about how money weighs into the decision to even start your own firm. Some things we kind of covered too was, figuring out what your overhead's going to be, trying to keep your overhead as low as possible. I would also recommend from day one, keep track of your average fee per file, and then have an idea, especially when you're starting out a new practice, how many matters or clients are you going to have per month, and then kind of take that average fee per file and figure out what you expect your revenue is going to be. And that way you can keep your overhead, hopefully, lower than your revenue so that you're not operating at a loss. Then you have to make decisions about money along the way. So that's what I want to ask you about next. how do you make those decisions, Zarina, about when to invest money in something? For example, when to hire an assistant or when to outsource to a virtual assistant, when to maybe expand your office space or spend more money on technology, whatever the financial decision is, how do you weigh that cost benefit analysis of spending money versus, keeping your overhead low?
Well, so for the first like couple of years, I budgeted a lot. So I just knew that I needed to hire somebody part-time. This is how much money I had for that, and that was just going to be it. So it's just a lot of budgeting, a lot of working to get more work in so that we can reach whatever goal you want or whatever need you have in your firm. And also price shopping. You got to shop around. You really do. And one thing that we talked about, like, maybe somebody mentioned the tech stack. So a lot of things that you're already using might be already available in whatever tech stack you have. Don't go out there and look for something else. For example, I use Google Workspace in my business. It has the video conferencing feature. I don't need to go ahead and buy Zoom, but I did. And until I realized, what am I doing? This is redundant in my business and it's just costing me more money. Google Meets is working great. I'm just going to pay for that, which is part of what I'm already paying for. So it's about really analyzing what you already have, budgeting, and just planning.
Yeah, and on technology, a quick plug for our last session in the series was on choosing technology for your solo or small firm. And then we've got some good information in there about deciding when to spend money on technology or not to spend money on technology. And the point that I make in that section is exactly what you're saying, Zarina. We've got a lot of software in our office probably that does a lot of different things. You may not realize it, and then you go pay for something else, but you've already got it in this other software. So you got to kind of know what you have and really figure out if it's worth spending the money or not. Clint, how about you? And you've been in some different situations. How do you figure out when to spend money on something or not? Investing and maybe in advertising, marketing, spending money on advertising. How do you make those decisions on when to spend money?
It really goes back to KPIs or key performance indicators. Some of the numbers that you were talking about. I look at those, and then some of it is just trial and error. You give something a try, you track it for a little while. If it works, great. Maybe you put more into it. If it doesn't, you get rid of it, and you try something else. It really, again, it kind of goes back to what kind of firm you want to have. If you anticipate a huge, large caseload with a ton of revenue, then maybe it makes more sense to invest in one thing versus another. It's kind of going to depend on where you're at, but having some sort of like KPI or other indicator of measurement to use is critical. Otherwise, you're just kind of spinning your wheels out there and you don't really know what you're going to get. Just for me personally, like I said, I always try to keep my stuff, my overhead as low as possible. And I found some like really good tools to help with that, like Text Expander, Simple Certified Mail. Those are all things that save me a ton of time. And if there is like one of your most valuable asset, when it comes to making money as an entrepreneur is going to be your time. So that's a huge, it's not really a KPI that I use, but it's a huge factor that goes into my decision making is my time going to be better spent elsewhere, and will this investment, give me a better return on that. So that's probably what I'd say in that area.
Now let's talk about where you spend your time, right? So, for example, in marketing, all marketing is either going to cost you time, which is going out doing lunches, coffee meetings, bar association stuff, networking. It costs you time or it costs you money. There's kind of no way around that. It either is going to cost one of those or both of those. And that's probably true for a lot of different areas in your business, not just marketing. So how do you kind of evaluate what to do with your time? For example, you're a lawyer, you got to practice law, you've got to go to court, you got cases, you got clients, but you also have to work on your business and find time to work on your business, not just in your business. How do you balance how to divide your time up between what you have to do as a business owner and practicing law? Clint, I'll start with you.
I mean, I just, in my experience, what I've done is I've tried to focus on whatever I'm doing. Like, I'm really the product at the end of the day. And I'm the one who has to establish trust with clients and referral sources, because that's, at the end of the day, like, really what we're selling as attorneys is trust. And so I'm a big proponent of avoiding marketing agencies. I know a lot of attorneys have a different opinion on that. But I kind of feel like, and I've tried them before, and I kind of feel like the content that they produce, it all sounds the same. It's all stuff that you're, scrolling through and kind of rolling your eyes at, and it looks like what everyone else is doing. I think that you putting your own voice into it is the most authentic thing. And I think authenticity, especially these days, like it is the forerunner as far as, building trust with people. So I'm a big proponent of that. I do think that there's ways that you can help save time on creating all that content. I mean, now we have large language models, and we have other forms of artificial intelligence that at least give you a starting point, and then you can put your own spin on it. There's programs out there that'll allow you to take, one thing that you write, and it'll create like an audio recording of that, or it'll create a video, that's based on, whatever imagery or whatever that you've written. And then, other tools that'll disperse all of that to your different social media channels at once or staggered, with the click of like one button, when you're scheduling it. So researching into all that stuff and figuring out, okay, how can I best leverage all this stuff can really free up a lot of your time and allow you to keep your like authentic voice in it. One resource I would put out there is lawyerist.com. The small firm roadmap book that they have is fantastic. And they also do a ton of compare and contrast between the different legal services and provide discount codes as well.
Yeah, I want to highlight something you said, though. In all of your, and I think this is true of how you practice law, it's certainly true, though, for your marketing, is being authentic and being genuine is going to pay huge dividends to you. So don't try to sell yourself or be something you're not. Be your true, authentic self. And if you don't know who your true, authentic self is, you need to figure that out. But that's what your potential clients out there are going to be gravitating towards, is you as a person, who you are, what you're about. And that's what's going to separate you from other firms, is being your true, authentic self. So I think that's so cool to talk about authenticity. Zarina, I want to go to you now. So how do you balance between spending time on the practice and spending time on your business? And which one do you think is more important as a small law firm owner?
So I think the way to balance that is to just really control your calendar. So you have to make the time to do things. So if you have this work that you need to get done because you're committed with the client, block time out just to do that. You are running a business. You have things. You have to track business. You have to track how well your business is doing. You have to track the money. Make time in your calendar to do that regularly. That's how I balance it. It's just controlling my time.
Yeah, just controlling your time and time management. And I would encourage everybody, I think if you're a small firm or solo law firm, the most important thing you need to be doing is marketing, in my opinion. Always, always, always keep up with your marketing, because even when you get busy and you think, oh, everything's good, it's on cruise control, things can happen, things can change, and then it gets slow. And then you don't have those referral channels set up, or you're not, in that mindset of marketing. So always, always be marketing. And then when you start to grow, I think your next most important thing that you have to do is developing your team, helping your people to do well and to do a good job for your clients. And that's going to pay dividends as well. Brandon, you're probably at a stage of your new law firm, since it is a newer firm, where you probably got a little bit more time to work on the business until that volume gets higher where you want it to be. How do you see yourself kind of managing those two things?
So surprisingly, I thought I was going to have a lot more time to
Right?
focus on certain things. But like I said, I've been getting people that have been calling me about different things, which is great. I see it the way other people see it. It's funny. I had things written down that I wanted to talk about when if this topic came up. And be honest with yourself was number one. That I underlined it 3 times. Don't try to be anyone else. I think that's when you make major mistakes, when you try to be someone else and try to do systems that work for other people, or try to buy things or do things that work for other people. If you don't think it's going to work for you, don't do it. Okay. When it comes to just the business and stuff like that, I don't think business or marketing or doing the work is more important than the other. I think it's a balance. And it's funny because when we talk about balance, I think all of us can sit here and think of a time last week that our balance was just completely thrown off when it comes to
yesterday mine was messed up.
So for me it was Tuesday. Okay, so it's just just when it comes to those kind of things, you just have to determine you got to triage and say what's important right now, what's not important. But there's apps and there's technology like Clint talked about, and Todd talked about, that it just help you with that stuff. When it comes to like marketing, Canva is a godsend. Okay, when it comes to it's probably $10 to $12 a month. But you can create those same kind of images. Just put your words in there and make it your own, make it something that you would like. But it's something that you can sit here and make different posts, or you can make your own cards, your business cards. You can do those things to cut costs when it comes to that kind of stuff. When it comes to Buffer, there's certain apps that you can schedule posts. So you connect all your social media sites to it and just say, I want this post to go out on Tuesday. Or just the apps in itself, Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. When you have those business accounts, they give you the opportunity to schedule posts as opposed to your regular Facebook account. So, there's things that you can do, and there's things that I do in order to make sure that I'm getting things done. But I don't have to sit here and actually do them at that time. I sit here and balance that out and make sure that I can get things scheduled to do.
Yeah, and since you guys have mentioned a couple of software tools, I absolutely, AI is going to change everything. One that I've been experimenting with and really like is Opus Clip, which if you take a 15-minute video of you talking about several topics, it'll edit that for you in a few seconds down to like 10 or more reels that are 30-second clips to use on your social media with captions, and does a really great job of that. So you don't have to know how to edit video now, and there's tools out there that'll edit your video for you. We talked a little bit about your different practice areas that all of you are in. What advice would you give to people on choosing a practice area, choosing something to specialize in, maybe adding a new practice area? I was a public defender and I didn't work at a firm that did personal injury. I just learned how to do personal injury on my own and with the help of one of my partners who had some experience in that area. What advice do you guys give to folks on those things, like how to find that practice area and maybe even where you practice? Are you a local practice, a Florida practice, or a nationwide practice? Clint, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. I mean, look, if you've got experience in something, that's always a great place to start, do what you know. But a lot of times, like you'll see that a lot of practice areas kind of bleed together. So like in my practice area of property insurance work, I'm constantly getting clients who want to ask me about other real estate questions because they think if I can do their home insurance claim, then I must know everything about real estate law too. And, real estate touches so many different areas of the law that it's really impossible to know everything. But nonetheless, you can see, okay, look, I get a lot of calls about closing. So I'm going to start learning how to do real estate closings. And that's been another potential source of revenue that I've explored. Another thing is like, the way the world has kind of gone like to specialization. You can be a general practitioner, but you want to probably define the services that you're going to do very clearly, and kind of pick and choose what you're going to do in that area. And then I would say look into alternative education and other resources besides just legal focus. So if you're in a a particular practice area, look at the other professions and jobs and their trade organizations and advocacy organizations, and look to what they publish and the events that they hold, because you can learn a lot and you can meet a lot of good potential referral sources that way too.
Clint, real quick, talk about how you sort of did that with becoming a public adjuster, getting your public adjuster license, and how that applied to your practice.
Sure. So yeah, basically after Hurricane Ian, my house was kind of destroyed. It caught on fire in the middle of the hurricane, and it was flooded when I came back the next day. And so I had to relocate. And because I had sought out education through adjuster and contractor forums, I had some contacts, and I called one of them up and said, hey, look, I think I want to start adjusting claims as a public adjuster. I'm going to relocate to Southwest Florida and jump in. And they allowed me to do that. And it became an alternate revenue stream. And it taught me a lot about construction and estimating and all that kind of stuff that goes directly into litigating those claims, and has kind of given me a competitive advantage against other attorneys. And now it's turned into a management role. And, it's just it's an alternative, legal career that I just sort of fell into. And it was all, started from just trying to get educated and learn more about my practice area in alternative ways. And then, the chips kind of fell.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too, and something to keep in mind when you're starting your own firm. Maybe you're of the mindset, and if you really do have an entrepreneurial mindset, maybe you want to have maybe you want to have a side gig, right? You don't want to just practice law. Maybe you want to look at some other complementary things that you can do to still make money and have a great life, but not 100% just practicing law. Zarina, I know you kind of weighed these decisions on what practice areas to get into or focus on, and how do you kind of navigate where you should be putting your focus as far as your practice areas go?
So for me, I'm focusing on what's coming in the door, right? So
Yeah.
there's a big need for consumer bankruptcy right now, and that has turned into the bigger portion of my my business right now. I do personally love criminal defense a little bit more. It's a little more exciting being in court every day or regularly, and that's a little bit different than consumer bankruptcy. So for me, that's I'm focusing on what's coming the door, and that's what I'm doing in my business. As far as looking to see like what you should practice, for me, if you're creative, that network, maybe there's some need that they have that maybe another attorney. Clint mentioned that some things that you do bleed into others. Well, maybe another attorney in your network does have a need that maybe you can service that need. Maybe a family lawyer who does divorces, they need to refer out redoing a will, a trust that had been done previously when that couple was married, and they want to help their client out. Maybe you want to be that person who helps them with that will's trust portion of the work, or be the person they refer that to. So that's another way that you can maybe explore what kind of business to add into your into what kind of practice to add into your business.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, with that network that you're going to build and the people you're talking with and other practice areas even, or in your practice area, maybe there's a particular niche that other attorneys, they don't want to do the work and they're turning those down, and they could refer that work to you, especially when you're getting started, right? Or really, I think the advice is just look for a problem that a lot of people are having and then try to solve their problem. Whatever that is. And as we've talked a lot about today, adapt and pivot. The market's going to change. Bankruptcy goes up and down. For a while, bankruptcy was great. Then, maybe that practice area, something happens, bankruptcies go down. So then you want to focus on something else until bankruptcy comes back in again. And then it's big and there's more of a demand for it. So just be able to adapt and go with conditions. So we've got about 15 minutes left. And if we can, I'd like to leave a couple minutes for questions at the end. So Folks that are watching us, put those questions in the chat for us because we want to get to as many of those questions as we can. And so with the time we've got left, I got a couple questions left for you all. And thank you so much. This has been awesome. But let's talk about the upside of having your own firm. And Clint, I'll start with you. What would you say is the most rewarding thing about having your own firm?
For me, I like being able to live the lifestyle that I want kind of when I want. I've still got lots of goals and I haven't achieved everything that I want to achieve, but I like having the freedom to, if I want to spend time with my family or if I need to, take off and take care of something in my personal life, I can do that. It's cool to look back at 2018 and think about how I've been able to support myself. And it's just, that makes me proud, and that's a very meaningful thing to me. And so, yeah, I mean, I think just the freedom and a little bit of the pride that comes with being able to do that is the most rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. Zarina, I'll go to you next. What's been the most rewarding thing about having your own firm?
The most rewarding thing about having my own firm has been helping people on my own terms, if that makes sense. I'm able to envision how to process a case from beginning to end that I feel is like more efficient, or maybe would help the client better than where I was working they would want it done. That's one of the most rewarding things for me. Also, I love the flexibility it gives to my life. If it's maybe you're having a personal hardship, maybe you're able to set your own roles and pivot. You can't do that working for somebody else. And that's what I find rewarding.
Yeah, Brandon, how about you? So far, what are you getting out of it? What do you anticipate being the most rewarding thing having your own practice?
It's the same thing, a little bit of the same thing that everybody else has said, but it's just doing what you love to do. You get to make the decisions you want to make, and you get to build something that you want to build, and build it the way you want to build it. I mean, you could put the extra time and energy into it that you want to put into it, and just seeing the fruits of your rewards, the fruits of like your labor. I think personally, some of my biggest complaints, or some of the complaints that I've talked to people that have worked for other firms, are just like, well, you work for this firm, you do this PI case, and then, you get 10% of whatever, the fee is, or, you do this, you do that, and, the case gets taken over by a partner or something like that, or different things of that. But this is your case from start to finish. And you can put the energy you want to put into it and create the product you want to create.
Yeah, I think those are all great answers. And, really, I commend all of you. You're putting your mark on the world and on the legal community, and you're doing things the way you want to do them. And that's an awesome thing. And, there's a lot of reward that comes with being an entrepreneur and starting your own firm, and the satisfaction you get out of achieving that level of success that you all have achieved, and doing it on your own terms and doing it the way you want to do it, and having a firm that reflects your values that we've talked about a lot, reflects who you are as a person. And also, it's just, at the end of the day, I know we all agree, it's just the most awesome privilege we have to be able to help people. And if you can make a living and have a good life for yourself by making other people's lives better, I think that's a great profession to be in. So as we're getting here closer to the end, we did see a couple of questions coming in the chat, and we're going to get to those. But I want to ask everybody, if you were given advice to someone, and all these folks on the call, you're giving them advice, what would be your best advice about starting your own law firm? Zarina, I'll start with you.
I think my best advice would be to do your law firm. Do it how you want to do it. What works for other people, what they're doing, how they're doing it. It might not be for you. It might not, maybe they're doing a certain practice that maybe that's not what you like. Maybe they have a system that's one of them. Maybe that's not what works for you. Just do your own thing. it's great to take inspiration from other people, but make it your own.
That's great advice. Clint, how about you?
I'm a big fan of the rule of three. So the three things I would say is one, save money before you do it. Two, define your vision and build systems on how to get there. And then three is just take action and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
If you wrote a book about those three things, I think you'd have a bestseller there. Those are three really good points of advice there for anybody in business, for sure, Clint. Those are awesome. Thank you. Brandon, how about you?
I think the biggest takeaway, and the one thing I want to say is believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, clients are not going to believe in you. If you don't believe in yourself, investors are not going to believe in you. If you don't believe in yourself and you're walking around with that self-doubt, you're not going to make the decisions you need to make. And you also are not going to start your own law firm ultimately because you're going to talk yourself out of it. So believe in yourself. Anybody listening today, you are enough. You're going to do a great job no matter what. And hopefully in the near future, you'll be the person on this panel giving this talk as opposed to all of us. So believe in yourself.
Yeah, and I hope those of you that are on the call, if someday you become, billionaire successful attorneys, you remember us on the call. And if we helped you at all, reach out to us and let us know that you got something out of today's panel. I think for me, what I would tell everybody, and this is from, being around doing this for a long time, is number one, a couple people have touched on it, be yourself, be authentic, be genuine, put your clients first, try to help address their needs. If you help them, you're going to be rewarded for that. So that's the most important thing, I believe, is putting other people first and having an outward mindset, and see how you can serve others. And then you'll reap the rewards from that for sure, as long as you put service to other people first. Okay, we did have a question or two that came in. Want to thank all of our panelists. You guys are awesome. Great advice and information today. Alexis, I'll take this first question, I guess, and throw it out there, which was, what's your biggest challenge as a solo practitioner? Anybody jump in?
I would say it's all on you. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people have to deal with. It's your decisions. It's great because you're making your own decisions. They're for you, and they can do great things for your firm. But also, a bad decision sometimes can do things that are not great for your firm. So it's all on you. That's the biggest challenge of just accepting that. You have to, just be comfortable with making mistakes and be comfortable with going out there and just bumping your head a couple times. But definitely the biggest challenge is just doing that.
Yeah, Zarina, you want to go? Oh, go ahead, Clint.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I kind of related to that. For me, the biggest thing, and I think it's going to be different for everyone, but for me is learning to delegate. That was really hard, once you have put all the time and effort into it and you're used to, the way that it's done, letting other people do some of the work for you can be difficult, but it's definitely necessary, and you'll be glad that you did once you get over that.
Zarina?
I definitely agree with Clint and Brandon. Is everything is on you, and learning to delegate, because when you're delegating, you're just kind of releasing it and hoping that somebody can do it as good as you can do it. And so I agree with that. But personally, one of the things that has been my challenge to add something different is promoting myself. So I've always been a worker bee. I had a dream to have my own business, but I've always been a worker bee. And worker bees don't really promote themselves. We just put our heads down and do the work. So you've got to learn how to celebrate the great things that you're doing. You've got to celebrate yourself, what you've accomplished, and share it with other people. And that's been what my challenge has been.
That is so good, Zarina. I'm glad you said that. And when I started, years and years ago, I had the same problem. I just didn't like even talking about myself, or even, even telling people why they should hire me, that I'm, whatever the reason is, or even marketing, I just had a hard time with that. So I think you're right. You got to get really comfortable with selling yourself and recognizing your value and what you're adding to the world, and go out there and tell people about it. Be proud of that. And go out and tell people who you are and how you can make their life better. I think that's really important. So Alexis, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I don't see any other questions.
Yep. Thank you so much. I echo everything that Todd just, said about you all as being a part of this panel, and just I'm truly in awe of all of the motivation that each of you have, the drive, the humility, and at the same time the confidence. It's just a lot to look up to, and I appreciate you all being a part of this important panel and emboldening other folks that may be, fearing jumping off the ledge or unsure of themselves. And I just really appreciate sharing this platform with you all. So before we officially sign off, I go back into the housekeeping announcements. I did drop the CLE code into the chat. This was approved by the Florida Bar for 1.5 general CLE credits and also 1.5 business litigation certification credits. I should have typed certification credits in there as well. And that CLE code is 2405418, N as in Nancy. Again, it's in the chat, and you will also receive an email in 24 hours from Zoom with this recording, and that CLE code will be typed in that email as well. So don't worry if you're listening from the road or you couldn't write it down, you'll get it. Additionally, my email address is in the chat. If you don't see that email, if you need anything else, if you have any follow-up questions, etc. So again, Clint, Zarina, Brandon, Todd, thank you just for spearheading this amazing discussion. And I know I'm leaving on this Friday feeling like I can do anything listening to all of you. So is there any last words that anybody wants to share before we sign off?
Just want to
Thanks
thank
for
our
having
panel.
us.
Thanks everybody for being here.
All right,
Same here.
everybody.
Thank you.
Me.
Thank you. And so everybody have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. I also should have mentioned, I will include a link to the prior videos. Todd did mention sessions that we had on technology or on other topics, networking, in that email from Zoom. I'll include links to that as well, so you can go back and watch anything that you may have missed or you want to watch again. And so with that being said, happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the next training.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.